I'm Ed Marsh. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Signals from the OP. If you've seen Signals before, you know that I use this as an opportunity to talk about issues that I believe are of strategic importance to industrial manufacturers that are thinking about ways to improve revenue growth. Today I want to talk about hedging against disruption. But let's start here. Let's start with a simple analogy, and you can decide, maybe I can even save you some time. Maybe this video isn't for you. If you're an index fund kind of investor, in other words, if you just look for beta returns, then let me save you the next 4 or 5 minutes. You're going to think I'm nuts. Go back to work on your email. On the other hand, if you're an alpha investor, if you look for that opportunity, that extra edge, then I think we get something to talk about. If you look for that kind of an edge, you probably ask yourself some questions. Things like, what big ideas do you see, do you intuit that you think others don't? What happens if you're wrong? What's the upside if you're right? How can you hedge the risk? Those are normal kinds of questions if you're kind of a speculator, if you look for alpha type investment opportunities. This is a big piece of what I spend my strategy time working on with clients. What are the trends that are going to impact their business, their clients or customers' business, and their customers' customers? Those are the things that I think often slip past the radar of competitors and create really unique and strategic opportunities. In the industrial space, for instance, what's really the role for sales channel going forward? The trend toward PaaS, product as a service, and product service systems. It's a big one. How about the plunging cost of distance, as Karen Harris of Bain calls it? 3D printing, drone deliveries, etc. It's changing the economics of manufacturing and distribution. Demographics, as biotech extends healthy working lives, completely changes the question about workforce availability. And then, there's obviously for every industry, some more industry-specific kinds of topics and opportunities and threats and disruptions as well. So if you get the concept of investing for alpha, then you're probably naturally comfortable with doing some speculation. You experiment, some bets pay off, you think some may pay off big and you're disappointed. But the point is, whether they pay off or not, you hedge that risk. So you look for those opportunities, you speculate, you hedge the risk. So you've got a controlled downside, and in many cases, you've got a really big upside. So I think there's ways that companies can do this in this space of industrial disruption as well. For instance, capital equipment manufacturers could take back some used equipment, actually use that as a way to help get a transaction done for some new equipment, refurbish it for relatively low cost, and then they've got something on their books for very little money that they can actually use to begin to experiment with a PaaS model, a product as a service model, rather than a traditional capital sale where a company pays for it all up front. They could find a great long-standing customer, maybe the kind of customer with whom I work often with capital equipment manufacturers, where they might put some parts into a facility on consignment in support of a large agreement, number of machines on the floor, number of locations, etc. What if they took a 3D printer and put it into that customer on some sort of a trial basis, perhaps as an alternative to some of the parts that they might be putting in there on consignment? Maybe they could offer machine monitoring as a service, just an optional add-on to the equipment that they're selling right now, but allow them to begin to build a body of data and understand how they can monetize other services and monitoring and alarms and alerts and reports and maintaining the records the companies need to be able to refer back to them for compliance and other kinds of things. They could also fund a multidisciplinary Skunk Works. People from marketing and sales and legal and finance that work together, look for interesting ideas from other industries, and at the intersection of industries, maybe they've got a specific budget, maybe they're charged with coming up with a certain number of ideas per quarter, vetting them and prioritizing them and presenting them to a senior management team for insights and opinions and plans on whether or not to begin to execute it. They could even, depending on the size of the business, have some sort of a small fund that they use to invest in promising technologies in other companies. And by making those investments, access the information and the learnings and the technology and rights to use it, perhaps preferential rights over competitors in their space, and maybe make some money on those investments as well. But learn about the change and disruption that's happening. All of these things can be done at relatively low cost. A $20 million company can take a number of these steps. $100, $200, $500 million company could allocate a couple $1,000,000 a year to fund this entire sort of an operation, which wouldn't cost a ton of money, with potential significant upside and hedging to the downside. That's really the key. The point is to manage the risk, not to eliminate the risk, but to manage it. Look for those alpha opportunities without betting the company kind of risks. But fundamentally, the question is, I guess, do you believe, as I do, that this time is different? If you believe that the transformational technology changes in the way products are manufactured and distributed, the changes that the internet is introducing to buyer behaviors and the implications that has on business, if you believe that this time is different, then we may not know exactly what it's going to look like in 10 years, but we know it's not going to look like some sort of a linear extrapolation of the way it has for the last 50. So we have to begin to take some steps. We have to experiment. We have to put ourselves in position with some managed risk and speculation to find those opportunities and take advantage of them. If you like this kind of a look at some of the challenges and traditions of industrial manufacturing revenue growth, I'd welcome you to subscribe to this video blog. I post videos about once a week. You can subscribe at signalsfromtheop.com. That's signalsfromtheop.com. I'm Ed Marsh. Thanks very much for joining me.